my attention that the second video of the playthrough is badly damaged. It's like 4 hours long, and most of that time seems to just be nothing happening. I'm not sure what happened with that. I'm not sure how it got approved for BGG. Right now I'm reprocessing it in a low def version, which just to get it up there quickly. I think everything may be there in the original version. There's just a lot of blank space in the middle, but I don't know. All right, this we had relatively equal command point picks, or rolls, because I don't put those in the cup. I roll a die for them. It's the only reason I have six-siders back in the table, actually. The English won the initiative, or actually Eugen did again. He's picking Württemberg. This is going to just be a reform action. Overall, it looks like the French are winning this battle in all concerns, except right here they kind of fell apart in their counterattack. So I don't know if there's any way to save the English position at this point. Württemberg tried a little minor rally there. We got this Rotzu counter marching, try to fill in the gap over here. I'm gonna try to get my leader over here. I moved him, cheated moving him there after the strategic movement, but I was tired last night, so fixing a few things is something I often do. Then we got Inglesby here, who marched forward in assault, and the French cav, some of it's countercharging him, just to break that up. He has nowhere to retreat to because he's pinned up against this infantry. But as we saw over here, cav charges are not bad, even these mixed things. A pure carousel is kind of bad, and that's what we're going to see in a couple of the hacks. And mixed results here with units routing from both sides, but the artillery that was exposed there has been hit and is gone. And that's one way of kind of trimming away the French defenses, is to rip that artillery up. That was so effective earlier. If I could have gotten this result earlier, then maybe the attack would have succeeded over here with Holstein back. But the only reason this attack's possible is because of that counterattack the French made, exposing the guns. So there really wasn't an opportunity to put this kind of pressure on the French center before that initial attack. All right, and then Blenheim slams in and really does a lot of damage to Württemberg's force here. As to the video, I'm not sure what's going on it. There seems to be one corrupted piece, which I can view on my machine, but when I try to process it and create it into a movie, and when I view it on my machine, it still claims to be like hours long, and seems to repeat itself. So I'm not positive. I haven't watched it full through, but that's what I'm getting the impression of, is that there's some sort of weird error in the encoding, maybe the transmission from my video camera. So I just cut that out, and hopefully that'll be going up. But that's after a full processing that failed. So sorry, you're gonna miss a little bit of the battle, and actually some interesting insight, I think, in that video. But I don't know. There's no way I can think of to say. Diaco launches his another cav attack on Württemberg, and now to some limited extent Fugger. I'm noticing a lack in counters, which is in particular a particular type of counter. I don't find all the different types of charge counters terribly useful, but I'm using them to represent different kinds of charge reactions. So in this case, this guy can't do anything, this guy can't do anything, so I'm using the reaction fireds to indicate that they can't fire. I'm not sure how much I need them for otherwise. And these guys are only going to get half fire So this is going to be I got really terrible rolls. This is going to be a particularly effective charge, I think. So much for that prediction. It was actually relatively ineffectual. I don't remember which piece I'm putting into place. I'm just worried that I forgot to mark some of my carcassoles here by withdrawing them back from last turn. There's a lot of little pieces in this game and a lot of little modifiers and everything like that, and I feel like in each round of combat I'm very likely to miss little elements, perhaps throughout the entire piece of combat, or quite possibly sporadically. I'm not worrying too much about it. This is a game where I don't think those little shavings are going to matter too much, although maybe misplaying the rules and also playing with what seemed to be the original rules of the famous Victory game and then switching later to Fields of Glory probably has skewed the game significantly. I think that whatever little errors that I make, a break here, a break there, there's a lot of variance to the dice too, with 10-sided dice and with the number of rolls that are occurring. Lots of things can happen in terms of whether a unit's going to take a morale check or not. So it's all a game of little incremental effects, and if you screw some of them up, it's probably not a terrible thing. Successes of cav charges. Churchill is launching one here against the edges of 2 French cav units, hopefully to disrupt them quite a bit. We're using a lot of different counters here. Reaction fire indicating no fire, move fires to indicate half fire. Now this is doing the mixed move fire charge in, so it has that marker. Because these guys are doing full tilt, I don't want to use markers on everything if I can hold it. This is doing a standing assault, and just those are Brits. They're not even, I mean, he was there. So I think what I'm going to be seeing there is the already disordered full tilt charge modifier. The problem is he was already in place. There wasn't anything he could do. He couldn't break off. He's got to assault. To me, it's the same as if you get broken on your way in, I guess. Anyway, that's how I'm playing it. Here we've got a full tilt against 2 stacks of French. I couldn't even move into this hex because you can't do a charge through woods. A lot of this is all very, geez, how do you interpret these rolls? It's not all hammered out completely. And that's, I guess, fairly common for Berg rolls. Compare that to the musket and pike, where you feel like you can get an answer to anything you want if you really work hard at it. Work hard, what I mean is the musket and pike rules are very concise. They contain the information, but it's not always trivial to find because it'll sometimes just be in a sentence somewhere that covers several different aspects all at once. And a little bit of logic and looking at it, you don't have to bring a lot of knowledge to the game, but you can understand what the rules imply pretty clearly. They do spell things out specifically. Sometimes they go against what your first intuition might be. Here, though, you're probably better off not bothering trying to look up and find where in the rules something is said. And to some extent, I'm happy with that because then I come up with my own style of play. In this case, I'm a little less happy because I'm not so sure how these armies are supposed to operate and how they're supposed to work. It's pretty easy in ACW. It's a lot harder when I'm facing something like this. I wish this game didn't have such cumbersome mechanics because this was pretty exciting. The full tilt charges, one of them got reversed, running into these cav positioned in the wood line. That was just too much. and that routed back and caused some disruption to Churchill's command. But this one slammed through 2 units. This one slammed through 1 and hit another one. We're basically slicing up the Zralabin line. His cav is just being destroyed here. And you can see I'm having some impact on the infantry as well behind it, which is too close. So that's a pretty nifty hole there that I opened up using Churchill's cav. Now how well he'll come out of this is hard to tell. I've got a routing unit. I've got units in kind of questionable positions where they might undertake some assault. And there's not a whole lot that English cav can do. It won't fire. It's just gonna, I don't know if they have bullets for their pistols. They certainly are armed. It's just I know that they're armed with less ammo, and their doctrine was essentially, you know, knee to knee charge and sabers out, and kind of more or less ignore the pistols to engage. I guess they pull them out after they actually impact in some cases. Anyway, that was pretty spectacular, actually. Here's an interesting new rule I found in here. The line replacement allows you to shift units to replenish injured or damaged units in the line. You're allowed to move through a friendly unit as opposed to normal stacking, even through a disordered unit without any effect. You can't go through routed units though. You're allowed to move back. Another unit is able to move backwards without a facing change 1 hex. Sort of a swapping going on there if you want. What I'm looking for is whether or not I can rotate this artillery. I got an artillery limb for the French. I started firing on these units, but I'd like to actually just rotate that unit. Normally facing changes are during movement only, and I'm not taking a facing I'm not taking a movement action because I had some useful artillery fire. I think I'm stuck facing this way, that I won't be able to actually reface him. Now, if I was just engaged from this direction, I would be able to turn it, I think. I'm not sure if that applies to artillery. I'd look that up if that was the case. Well, I'll look it up anyway. Yeah, any non-moving unit can do a facing change. During that, but wow, they're only allowed to use reaction fire once, which would mean they wouldn't get to fire in both rounds. At the best strength allowed by the DR. I don't know what the DR is. I hate abbreviations. You know, DR, it could be die roll, it could be damage rating, it could be all doctrine range. Okay. I don't know. But I guess that means they get their full fire but not their half fire. Best they get. But since I'm already in position here, unless these guys turn to face me, I'm not going to be able to turn and do anything about them. That's how I see it with the rolls. I think I got some more firing over here, but I kind of lit up the central Dutch units that were over there. They were trying to reform. I've got the matchstick there to indicate which units weren't in command. There's no out of command markers or anything like that in the game. Because I really do need to take an artillery movement phase. I've already fired some of these. Not just to turn him, which, you know, if I can't turn him back, it's kind of, I'm not sure I want to do it. But I've got some artillery that got limbered by fire here. I think the idea is to make artillery kind of so cumbersome that you have to kind of call a halt to firing to go find the crews that aren't, you know, at their guns, and to convince them to come up and turn the guns, add the additional people who can turn the guns rather than just the crew that's up there to fire it. Remember, these are civilian gunners, actually. Civilian's a weird concept, though. Essentially, they're mercenaries. You know, if you're in the artillery, you're hired to be on the battlefield, not necessarily to be fighting all that desperately, but you're certainly being paid to put your life in some risk. So you're still a soldier. You know, nowadays we don't differentiate between supply officers who probably were also civilian contractors in the same sort of sense. The real difference is that military order doesn't apply to them. And that is a significant issue. All right, we finish up the limbs here with this General C down here, having launched a mixed attack of carousels heading this way and the combined attack on this other unit up here. These guys were able to do full tilt countercharges. They were able to get them off, and not terribly decisive in either case, mainly casualties going. That's something I wanted to point out. I'm long out of casualty markers from here. I've pulled into Fields of Glory's ones, which are a little different, which is cool because then I can keep them apart. But normally when you run out of casualty markers in a game, or I don't know, especially if they're just the numerical markers, usually it's pretty easy to dig up other markers from another game. So many games have them that it's not a big deal at all. But here they're a little bit different looking. There are some things you could use for them. In fact, the two sets are different looking. Number markers aren't used in this game, so you could use 1s and 2s for it. But they are a little different from the casualty markers used in other games. So they might kind of throw you for a moment. Hey, what the hell am I going to use for these? It's not really a big deal. It's just there aren't enough core counters or counters in the base counter mix to handle that, which is often the case. They're a little different, and I'm repeating myself. Now we're going to go to the no limbs phase, and geez, I don't remember. I think the Allies got the initiative. I should have. Hey, maybe this flips. No. So it'd be cool if it was double-sided. I can mark who has the initiative with it. I could give them a choo-choo or a wooden elephant or something like that too. All right. Orkney's command pushed across the stream here, is continuing to try to put some pressure on Blenheim itself. Now, you know, this isn't going to go very far, I don't think, but I just don't have enough forces that are attacking to make sense of this attack. But once it's started, it kind of is hard to stop these things. The command's getting fragmented so that it's going to be more and more ragged as it goes. I'm going to have to swing guys this way, but the particulars of the rules for an assault action or an attack action or whatever required that I kind of create this kind of mess. For the French, they don't particularly want to do an assault, so they kind of dress the lines in the back, getting them in a better linear formation. Had they done an assault, they'd be leaving the village to counterattack. So they're just standing where they are and not pressing things. That means, you know, there's no firing going on here beyond what the British pushed. Which, if neither side does anything, might feel a little odd. If they sit there for a long time. Men of Iron has that kind of feel where, gee, we're just right next to each other. Why aren't we doing anything to one another? It feels even worse when you're talking fire, continual fire coming in. But this could be considered to be fire at, fairly long range, where they're not really going to be doing a lot of damage if they're not trying to advance. So you can try to put those things off. Most of the rest of what's going on, the French are kind of passing on as well. For example, I don't particularly want to move this unit or do anything with it. Over here, I did a rally action to rally one unit that had come back from this line because I could define it as part of this. It hadn't been used in the command before. The attack had been... Why did those units get routed if that's the case? I think it was routed last turn. It's hard to remember, what all the commands are, and in a sense, you almost feel like it would have made more sense to give some kind of delineation to individual units. Unfortunately, in this particular battle, the designer decided not to try to allocate lines to his own tastes and just said, hey, do it however you like, because we don't have a historical certain deployment here. So, well, I'll let you figure out how you like, which has sort of forced the game into some abstractions, allowing units to join with other lines and such not, which probably aren't terribly realistic. Berg even kind of admits to that, but rather than come up with some canonical decision that, all right, well, this is how this battle really was, and implicating the counters in that decision by giving them some kind of marking. And I'm sure, some of the other games from the Great Battles of History and the Men of Iron series that he's done have just as shaky a force disposition as this does. But there seemed to be this unwillingness to commit the players to a force disposition on this. Maybe he's learned since then that kind of makes people shy away from the game. When you're going to make it kind of unrealistic, as well as not knowing, what the historical deployments were, and also make it more difficult to actually play, etc., because you don't have a clear delineation on the counters that'll help you determine what units are what. Now we're at kind of the cleanup stuff where I'm going to take the out of command units, try to figure out which units are out of command, and then obviously the routes and such. As I'm playing this, I'm beginning to come to the understanding of there's two rally phases. Not so much why they're there. That kind of makes sense either way you want to look at it. It seems almost like a duplication, but basically here you have the option to attempt to rally any of your out of command units. Here it looks like you have the option to attempt to rally any unit you like, out of command or not. So essentially, you can kind of go down your line and make rolls on anything. It's risky. So maybe you don't want to, maybe you do. I don't know. It's not absolutely clear to me that this is required. I kind of did them all this time. I haven't been doing them for in-command units before that aren't routed or whatever. And then all your routed units move again. But the risky part of this is each of these rolls can start frittering away your units and send them into a rout if they're disordered and all kind of crappy stuff like that. So I don't know which way to go with it. You're more likely to recover the unit. But if the unit's in command and not doing much, you probably want to avoid rolling it. Got some points here. 12 more Allied losses have been chalked up. And we got some... I don't know if Dragoons count double. I think not. So I think that's just going to be 6 points. If I could find the victory for this scenario, I'd know that. but I'll mark it down as 6 and maybe worry about it later. Whatever the value of all that die rolling might be towards some sort of realism or different stages of possible rallying that are being allowed or whatever, it means for a lot more mechanical complexity. You're just rolling the die for every damn unit that's been disordered, perhaps. If this is mandatory, you're getting a lot of die rolls. Assuming it's not mandatory, assuming you have a choice of when to make your rallies, you still probably are making a lot. Over here, you can only do it with your out-of-command units. That's to make up for the ability to rally your units under normal conditions. But then you have this kind of, I can do it all over again. And in those, you could end up, well, you route once when you first get routed. Then you can route again here and here, each of these having movement. Of course, you'll have taken 2 step losses by this time, and then you route again. So you could be most of the way off the map. I don't mind that because formed units are going to move a lot slower than routing units. The question, of course, is should routing units route the full distance like they do in most games, or, you know, do they have multiple chances to turn that route around where you get to see how far away they get to go? And if you don't try, though, you won't send them very far. They'll go at most once for the initial contact and then once after the rally over here, as opposed to up to 4 movements. Just, it doesn't seem very coherent to me. French got a lousy distribution of chit picks, only 2, and the English got some 6 or so. See the effect in terms of the unpicked chits. The French also got the initiative and did a rally action here. Now they can't affect the units that are in zones of control. This is actually even out of command. And I'm not sure it was part of that wing, or that unit or wing for that matter. I think that's part of Zalban's force. It becomes hard to tell what units get this moved from one line and then maybe end up in another wing. And that's going to be possible that that'll happen. I'll try to prevent it from happening, but there's nothing within the design of the counters to help remind you which you're on. And, well, the fires are all out. This should be an interesting turn where the English command level starts to shine through and give them some advantages. Again, I caught myself with Marcin not in the right place. I wanted to be able to activate Humrus to move his infantry up, try to repulse the English from that hill area. They could cause some damage there. They're going to get the majority of the remaining picks. There being only 1 French piece in there. They got an artillery round, which actually probably caused more harm than good firing here into the village. The defensive modifiers are so high that the counterfire was more likely to do damage. But I did have a couple artillery here that picked up some hits on the French units that haven't figured out they're not supposed to be attacking anymore. Then Churchill takes his activation. And you know, it was so impressive last time, but I'm not hitting things like I was last time. Well, I'm hitting some of the things I was last time, which is over here. I'm not able to drive against these other units. The one place where I was a static hit here. Allowed me to move forward, though. Of course, could have taken just a move action and done that without fighting the battles. I could do line replacement there. That can cause the units that are being replaced to take a disorder check. What I'm finding is things are just, you know, well, this was already there, but we got a break here, the unit here. I'm just not getting any damage against the French there, especially after the rally that unit down there did. All right, a couple more actions. Hesse Castle pulls up here. He could have done an assault against this one unit down here, but instead he's trying to bring as much as he can over the water before he makes that move. And then Inglesby came up and dressed his line and smashed into the remains of Srlaban's cav. That's pretty much destroyed at this point. I think this is part of it, and this is still there, but the rest of it's just routing. This is another one of it, probably. He's going to have to fade away at some point, but with the infantry behind him, he couldn't do an orderly withdrawal from... he couldn't do the cav withdrawal, essentially, that would have allowed him to avoid this attack. You can see the English line is pretty smashed up. Most of it was actually on the line at the time, so they were just engaging in further melee. Kind of interesting to see when Humres comes into command, because he's planning on an assault of his own, maybe swapping this unit out as well, just to hit as hard as he can, and he'll be able to drive maybe those 4 units back. Of course, the English have their own reserve coming in that area. So we're seeing a breach in the center, which is really what happened at Blenheim. But it happened due to a peeling off of troops towards the flanks, and what we've actually been seeing is more a pulling from the flank towards the center to solidify it for the French. Consider the setup instructions, not the instructions, but sort of the historical commentary that should be the setup for this scenario that Berg gives. I'm beginning to think that maybe the information he has is more how things ended up in the battle rather than how they were set up, which would explain actually some of the reticence to give a setup to people, because if it's set up so that the center is going to collapse from the get-go, that's not how the battle actually was fought, from what I can tell. From what I can tell, troops were being diverted from the center regularly, and then the attack in the center was sort of a mid-battle occurrence that broke the French line. Of course, here we're seeing a couple of good columns making their way in. We're seeing almost this fixed, hey, I've got the pieces in place, I should do what it looks like I should do with them, rather than trying to force the French to reinforce the 2 flanks and then smash through. Okay, after Ranzau is, and it's apparently a very common name for many units and commands, is pushing his way through the swamp. And that may be ill-advised, because if he's along the edge of the swamp, well, if he's here, he can't charge, he can't be affected either, but he just becomes kind of this non-engaged section of the field, because the cav can't attack through the marshes. Then we see Humres marching forward, and you can see he's pretty much destroyed Inglesby's entire line there. Just smashed it out. Now he's taken his own routes as well, which have added to the column of fleeing cav. But until this comes into play, at the very least the French have something in the center that they can start to deploy and try to rally. And then they also have the artillery to support them. So if they get a good pick, or even if they don't, with a little cleverness, using the non-limb moves for this, they should be able to defend this, I think. But they definitely sent those British regulars running. Last pick was just Cutz's little cav force pushing its way across and essentially joining this other cav, Churchill's force. I got to keep 2 lines there, but how I define them and what I do, we got kind of a traffic jam, so I'd like to try to slide these out to provide support to the flank, because Churchill's in a fairly engaged position. He can't get out of there very easily, but Cutts could slide across and provide some support against whatever the French are able to throw together to defend their center. The way lines are defined, I'm having to do some kind of weird things that are sort of cheating. So for example, Holstein-Beck, in order to remember that it's these guys I activated when I used him, I moved him off of these guys and threw him over here, and likewise General A did the same thing. He rallied Humres's You know, those guys moved. I couldn't rally them. Well, I could have rallied some of them. I think I've got to... I was able to rally the routed unit, which I fell back to. And that's the most important. So I'll stick with that. But, yeah, it's really tough to try to remember what's activated, what's not. Unlike Great Battles of History, where you flip units over as they've moved, here you're not doing that, and you don't really have any way to indicate what's moved and what hasn't. And it can get pretty chaotic at times. There's no question. Road starts making a lateral shift to help cover that weakened center. Now that's going to weaken the French left, but that's okay. It seems like Württemberg's having real trouble over here, which is why I've pulled the leadership away. I'm starting to now shift some of the infantry away slowly. Guaranteed activation there. Orkney got a successful activation roll and launched an attack. Now, some of these units back here were not part of his command anymore, or he doesn't have them in command anymore, but he launched an attack against the artillery and infantry here at Blenheim. And, well, you can see he was pretty much routed back. The only place he was successful was facing the cav. One of them withdrew, one of them stood, to no effect on either side. Just like in Great Battles of History, one side will have more commanders than the other. The chits kind of randomize, you know, how many units get used, but the English actually will end up activating a lot more units on average early than the French will in this battle. I would guess in most of these, since Marlborough's in command of the Anglo-Dutch armies, or sometimes Anglo-Austrian, right? Throughout the scenarios. But I kind of would have liked to have held off with Württemberg until the Bavarians went. But I don't have that option. Every unit's been now activated. I have to do something with him. I'm not sure what I'm going to do. None of the options seem good. I was kind of hoping he'd attack first. I may end up just launching an assault. I don't know. We had a successful assault insofar as I managed to roll the die and get Württemberg activated. Or pretend that I did. But he got flung back pretty much. We had a withdrawal with a cav somewhere. I think it's this one. That was in a particularly bad location where he was getting shot at by these two units. But the others kind of punched him back. I was unable to capitalize on that with Blundville. I wasn't able to activate him for a further follow-up charge to knock him deeper into the swamp there. Then over here, Claremball responds with his own assault, and that was pretty good. And now I forgot to check for melee for these guys. These guys I completed totally, but I forgot to do the melee on these guys, which is going to finish off this routed unit. I don't think I'm going to melee beyond that because these guys are all in good shape. So we'll just punch in there, and I get to make morale checks on these. Yeah, that's going to disorder them. I think in the game you're supposed to make a morale check on a per unit basis. There are some reasons that would make a significant difference. I'm viewing that as just too much mechanical complexity and passing it off as, you know, if it's one unit, if it's one stack going in, I'll make a single roll, use the top unit's morale like I would in a lot of other games. It simplifies things, so that's why if you think I did something wrong, I'm doing things wrong all over the place, I'm sure. It's more a matter of this system is not really terribly playable, and I'm trying to improve it as much as I can in terms of making myself able to face it. Alright, we don't have much left. We just got the Bavarians, I think. There are other face-up units, but those are my wing. And I'm being more conscientious about rolling the route rolls. bunch of the French units that were in trouble running off the map, well, they just dissolved. It was a matter of time, really. It's whether they reach the end of the map or take enough hits that go at a 9 or higher on their morale in these rally rolls. There's a lot of cav here, so the points actually added up quite heavily. You can see I got about 46 points, it looks like, for the Anglo-Dutch, and looks like 72 for the French. I'll put those over in my dead pile. So it's not quite as one-sided as it seemed before, but, well, like the great battles of history, it could end up a big turn like that, swings the game heavily, happens at just the right time to break an army, one or the other army. I've had a thread over on BGG about how I'd like to see games that handle the pursuit after the army break. What is that going to be like? How much control do you have? What can you get out of there? There tend to be abstract means of displaying that. When you play something like Napoleon's Battles with Empires in Arms, I don't think I have Napoleon's Battles up here. I have a copy of it, but I never played it because it requires minis, or playing with counters as if they're minis, which to me is completely uninteresting. Minis for me is, and it also seemed a fairly light system. But it allows you to translate tactical rules for minis, or perhaps without, where you build your own terrain in all the Empires in Arms scenarios. And of course, after you fight the battle, you need to assess what actually happened there. And given that, units driven off the map may not be permanently destroyed, they may be just, incapable of fighting in the battle in a system like that or like this. You have to assess how many of the casualties are real in a manner that gives the percentages correctly for Empires in Arms. And then you also have to take into account things like captured artillery and stuff like that, and what all the effect of that would be. With a rout, you have to also take into effect that there's going to be larger losses. And games, I don't remember how well Empires in Arms handles rout. It's been a while since I played it. But, certainly something like I just played Grand Siècle or Europa Universalis very well shows you what a rout is like in the strategic sense. And then, if you wanted to play these out on a tactical battlefield, you would have to come up with some kind of solution from that. And would you really want to play out the pursuit? For me, I want to play out the pursuit because I want to see it more than I want to see it as I wanted to inform my campaign. My campaign is really a way to generate tactical battles more than anything else when I play a game. That's how I look at Federation and Empire for SFB, and that's how I think I'd look at something else. That's certainly how we looked at the Warfare in the Age of Reason combined with, God, I don't know. We had sort of a homemade guy named Dennis Farmer. He used to run... He used to be the curator over at Old Fort Niagara. He used to run a minis game for us that had that, and we only had it for a while because he had to move. One of the shames of modern life is you can't keep connections. You can't keep with the same people. You end up everybody ends up moving. Their lives end up changing in ways that aren't as well formulated as maybe they used to be in an earlier time, and that's really room for a rant rather than for one of my game videos. But I get off on these tangents. All right, move to 4. So the French won the initiative this time. There were very few chits for either side, 2 for both. Again, not that everybody knows this. Clarenbol pushed forward as the French pick. Didn't go to the bayonet, but drove away some of the English units, doing line swap. He's done that a couple of times there. You can see the effect. It's never worked out completely well for him. Because you got to make that morale check for the unit you pull out of the line. But, and in this case, you got the above 9 result, which is just horrible. But the idea is to put some pressure, maybe take out these guns, and then swing into place to threaten Churchill's command. I kind of want to move Bonsock's force up onto the hill here because I need some strengthening there. I don't have, well, I am moving Merode into place in that direction as well, but I didn't give him orders. I felt Bonsock could do a better job of filling it. Basically, I've got a huge section here that I need to pull the units that are there out of the line, try to recover them into something small to maybe do some stopgap actions here or here, and defend that main center as best as I can. Pretty much denying the British, the Allied army, what actually happened. We finish up the limbs with kind of ineffective Allied artillery fire. Bonsock pushes his forces across, as noted, not getting very far. And Hesse Castle did an assault, which finished this unit. Now I got another matchstick on the board. Got to delineate the places where two commands are meeting. These guys have moved, these guys haven't. There's no way to indicate that otherwise. Alright, the French withdrawal is Raben with an orderly withdrawal. He just has one unit of cav. He pulled out, took some fire doing so. He can't fire his pistols. That's my judgment. I'm not going to try to find something like that in the rules. It doesn't make sense that on a withdrawal you'd be able to fire such a close range weapon. And then Orkney launched an attack with his little right flank. That's all he is in command of. Smashed forward. Probably came out ahead, although he's got a route, and the French didn't take anything. But in terms of weakening the French position, the problem is what he maybe wanted to do was the orderly withdrawal just to get out of there. The problem was he was under too much of a too compacted a situation, too much of a traffic jam there to really be able to do that. So he instead pushed forward, figuring we'll put more pressure on what's coming over to the center and over to this edge. We're probably going to lose these artillery, but maybe we'll chew up the French troops on their attack, and they won't be able to do much as we hit this and hit the right flank of the transferring cav. Not a lot of chits, so there wasn't a lot of action. Now, everybody gets a chance. I got an annoying fly up here. Everybody gets a chance to act, but in a lot of cases I chose to roll a die and the chance is very low. Some cases you can see the French pushed up here. Merode's command has absorbed some of the forces that had kind of fallen back. I'm planning on trying to reattach things, but as of right now it's difficult to do. The village is hard to move through, and Merode is just using the default movement, which allows him to guarantee that he gets an action. Churchill did like a 1 unit rally. I think 2 units rallied actually, because he's too damaged to keep fighting here. General C tried to launch an assault. He made a roll for that. But I mean, that's the thing. If you don't pick the chit for something, you've got a very good chance of not getting anything. So taking something like a rally seems like a good idea quite often. So we're going to be hitting the out of command phase. Now, I've got some chunks of stuff that are out of command, guys like this back here. I'll probably try to move him and then rally him in the rally phase instead, because I'm kind of worried that the Bavarians are going to come across. They made a roll to try to act this time. I didn't flip all the counters over yet, or I won't. Over here, we had kind of a stalemate where these guys didn't get to move. I was kind of hoping to push them into position to face Blenheim, who looks like, as long as Marcin is not sure where he's concentrating, and if the chits are low and a lot of French chits are being used over here, maybe I can slip in and get in a successful attack, cutting what looks like a little gap there. Especially since some of his cav have kind of, Blenheim's have kind of ended up out of where you'd want them. They're out of command now. Weird with the out of command, they use different rules for movement than other units. They have a one hex movement. So I can wheel them around and move forward, and I don't know, can I wheel them some more? It's hard to tell. As we hit 5 p.m., I guess this is more or less our board situation. A few more units routed off the map, and I've already scored them. Getting bad for the Anglo-Dutch. They're up to 148. They were only about 20 points off. That's not one turn, but it's not too far. They might want to start considering just trying to hold on for a draw, but the French can rack up the score against them. I've seen how that kind of thing works. I think the best move is to try to win with the strategy they're going with and try to cut the French center still. But I don't see much hope of it before, 22 points are expended. So I think that's about the end. It's just a matter of watching it unwind now.